Patterns for Pirates, and I'm going to sew up one of the knit rompers with you today. We haven't quite decided on the name for this one, so I'm just going to be calling it Knit Romper during the videos, but I hope you're excited to jump in. I'm going to be sewing one for my daughter, so it will be a youth size. I have put my grommets in. I'm going to be doing a shorts romper with pockets and the dolman options. Let's get started. Now we're going to do the neckline. I'm just quartering it. So I have 2 notches on my center, front, and back. I always cut center pieces with a notch so that I don't have to find the center. So I'm just aligning the center front and center back to find the quarter marks. Go. Now this one's marked and ready. I'm going to grab my neckband piece, sew it up, and attach it. Remember, the back piece on this one is the lower piece. Keeping my shirt inside out and putting my band inside. Doesn't matter as long as you have right sides together. Since your band is folded wrong sides together, doesn't matter if it's on the outside or inside as long as it's to the right side of your shirt. Just matching up all of my centers and quarter marks, pinning it. Go. As you can see, my neckband's much smaller than my shirt. Your neckbands will always be a little bit smaller than your shirt, and you'll need to stretch to fit them. This helps the neckband snug up to the body instead of flopping out. Alright, I'm going to turn this right sides out, and I'm just going to press my neckline, and I'm going to go ahead and press my sleeves, my sleeve edges under 1/2 inch. You can top stitch here. I'm going to skip top stitching just to keep the video nice and short, but I'm not going to skip pressing. Okay, I'm back. I've pressed my neckband and I've pressed my hem allowance under on my sleeves. I'm going to leave both of these and go back and hem and maybe top stitch at the very end. So right now I'm just going to put my completed top section to the side and work on the bottoms. I am doing the shorts option, and I'm going to be adding pockets. This is my pocket liner in this light pink, and here are my 2 shorts. I'm going to put my pocket lining right sides together on the curve for the pocket and sew them up. Okay, now on both sides you're going to flip your pocket liner up into the back, give it a press. I recommend top stitching here. You don't have to top stitch here, but I really like to top stitch here. So I'm going to go press this and top stitch along this curve. Okay, so here I am. I pressed and then I top stitched. I wanted to mention it is really important to press before you top stitch on any knit seam. When you stitch a knit seam, sometimes the knit will stretch some, and when you press and steam it, it will shrink back to its original size. So if you don't press and then you top stitch, it might have stretched out with the seam, and then it will stretch out again with the top stitch. So it's important to press before, and you can press it again after you've top stitched. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to take my other pocket piece and I am going to align it with my shorts and my pocket lining. So my pocket lining has the same curve. It'll meet in this bottom. It will meet all along this edge. And then what it's going to do is complete the short on this corner. So I'm going to grab only the pocket pieces. I'm not going to sew the shorts, only going to sew through the pocket lining and the pocket piece on both sides. Okay, and we can just glance at our finished front piece now. I'm going to flip it over to the wrong side, and I'm just going to align everything just how I had it. And now what you're going to do is you're going to pin or baste your pieces in place. So you have a few layers right here. You have your main front, you have your pocket lining and your pocket piece. 3 whole layers right there that you either need to pin together or baste together. I'm going to pin just to help keep the video not too long. A quick baste, I think, is the easiest and the best way, actually. I'm just going to pin so I don't have to go to another machine. So here's what my front looks like. I'm just going to pin my other side. Okay, now that our front piece is all completed, we're going to sew it together with our back pieces. So here's my back piece. I'm going to put it right sides together, matching side seam and our tiny little inseam here. And I'm going to sew along the side seam and along this little inseam on both pieces, or both sides. I'm actually going to pause here. When I do pockets, I really like to press this seam to the back and top stitch it. And on the shorts, I just top stitch all the way. On the joggers, sometimes I'll just stop where my pocket stops. So on here, my pocket stops right here, and then you hem. So it's basically the whole thing of the shorts. So I go ahead and top stitch the whole thing, especially when you're using thicker fabric like French terry or something that might want to poof out right here. I like to top stitch that down for a nice clean edge. So I'm going to do that before I stitch the inseams. Okay, I'm going to press this seam to the back and top stitch. Okay, here I am. I pressed it to the back, top stitch it, and I actually pressed it again. I also took the time to go ahead and press a memory hem. I always like to do that when I'm at the ironing board anyways, and it just makes it easier to do it in the flat versus the round. So I just like to give it a good press before I do the inseam. So now I'm just folding it back over, right sides together, stitching up these teeny tiny inseams. Okay, now what we're going to do is sew them at the crotch. You're going to leave one inside out and then flip the other one right sides out. I'm going to slip this one inside the other so they're right sides together, and we are just going to pin along the crotch curves. Every once in a while I'll see in the group that you can't get your crotch curves to line up, and the only reason why that ever happens is if you accidentally don't cut mirror images on your front and back pieces. So essentially you made 2 right legs or 2 left legs. Sometimes that happens when we're trying to cut out. Alright, so here we are, all pinned up along the crotch curve, and I'm going to sew it up. Okay, now essentially our shorts are done. We already have a memory hem on our shorts, so I'll just finger press that back where it has the crease and zip around with my cover stitch. I am going to go ahead and cover stitch this memory hem on my dolman sleeves, and we'll be back to do the waistband. Okay, here we are, all hemmed up on my shorts, hemmed up and top stitched my neckline and my sleeves. Now we're going to work on the waistband. What you need for the waistband is a mane and a lining. My mane is the purpley color and my lining is going to be the slight pink, and your elastic. I did a faux drawstring, so I already put my grommets in, and I'm going to sew up my faux drawstring. It's a very narrow piece. All you're going to do is fold it right sides together and sew it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. When I sew it on my serger, I like to just turn off my blade. Another thing you can do that a lot of people love the look is cut your piece and then you just pull it and let it kind of curl like a lot of knit fabrics do, if you like that look. You can also, of course, cut it just a piece of twill tape or any other drawstring you like. Shoestrings work really well. Since it's so narrow, I like to just grab a very small safety pin, pin it on there, and then I kind of push the safety pin down inside. Oh, it looks like I pinned through both sides. You can only pin through one side. I accidentally got both sides. So when you do your safety pin, you just want to pin through one side of your little tube. Then you're going to push it inside. And this little part you kind of have to finesse a little bit to get started. Just turning it right sides out. Once it gets started, it goes pretty quickly. I find using the safety pin is easier than any other turning tool when it's this narrow. Because as you can see, the safety pin just fits in. So once you're through, you just continue pulling it right sides out till you're all the way right sides out. go. I actually like to go ahead and feed this through now. You can wait. I like to be able to pull it from the back very easily. That does mean you run the risk of it getting in the way in the next couple steps. So you definitely can wait if you prefer to wait. I just like to be able to pull it from behind. I feel like it's much easier. But you can wait if you would like to wait. Alright, now it's pressed up. You can top stitch the seam. I prefer not to top stitch the seam. Some of the testers liked to top stitch it, so you can experiment and see what you like. It's so gathered right here. I didn't want to add any bulk. I thought top stitching it made it a little more stiff, maybe a little more poofy. So I didn't prefer it, but some really liked that. So you're going to grab your bodice, turn it inside out, and you're going to slip the bodice over top the shorts, making sure you have the front on the front. Okay, so now you're just going to line up the bottom of your bodice to the top of your waistband at those quarter points. All right. So now we have the seam that's still open, and that's where we're going to feed our elastic through. So I'm just going to grab a safety pin and feed mine through. We're back around, and now I'm going to overlap these edges 1/2 inch, and I'm going to sew them together. I like to use the widest zigzag my machine has on it, and what I do is I usually go down this edge and then I go down this edge so they're completely secure. You can just go down the middle and then trim. And so I just have 2 rows of a super wide zigzag. I go down and up each side. It's nice and secure. And now I'm just going to pull that elastic inside. There we go. And I'm just going to straighten out those seams to where they were just like when we sewed them. So my one underneath is nice and flat. My one on top gets folded over where those edges meet. Now what I like to do is top stitch this closed. You can leave it open if you'd like, so that maybe you can alter the elastic later on. So I'm going to do this back one, and I'm just going to stitch in the ditch right here, and I'm just going to use a straight zigzag, a straight stitch right here. You can do a zigzag or whatever you like. Usually my cover stitch is matching, and I use my cover stitch actually. It's alright if you use a straight stitch though, it doesn't really need to stretch right there. unless your fabric has a whole lot of vertical stretch and you're worried your little one is just really going to rip that sucker on. So I just stitched in the ditch right on that seam allowance. And now it's closed. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my hands in there and I'm just going to pull it quite a few times. You can stick your hands in from the bottom, the top, doesn't matter. Again, mine's a little bit more gathered than what just a straight size 3 would be, or straight size 5. Since she has a smaller waist, she's got a lot smaller elastic in here. Alright, and I just like to do that to make the elastic even. So it should be gathered pretty evenly after doing that a few times. Just grab it from the side seams, grab it from the center, front and back. And all that does is move the gathers around evenly. Now what I like to do is I like to stitch in the ditch on the side seams and the front. Why? Well, it keeps the gathers even, and it also keeps your elastic in place. I cannot stand when elastic tries to flip around in the casing. We have a nice tight casing here, but still sometimes it will want to flip when it's been in the washing machine and dryer. Or if your little one's just an acrobat putting it on. Every time before I do it, I like to kind of make sure those gathers are even though, because you don't want to sew it down unevenly. So I stretch, 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 make those gathers nice and even, and then right where I'm going to stitch, I pull it nice and flat. And just stitch right where that side seam is. It doesn't matter if you do a zigzag or double needle or anything like that. You really won't be able to see it once all the gathers are there. So right now you can see it if it's, but once it's on and it's gathered, you really can't see any kind of stitch. I always stitch it down the center if I'm doing a drawstring, because I don't want my little one to pull out that drawstring, and they will the second they put it on. Well, maybe not the second they put it on, but the second that you turn away from them, for sure, they'll rip this drawstring out. So again, I just like to stretch, 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 make sure the gathers are all even. Get it to where I'm only sewing through this front elastic. I like to make sure my seam allowances are pressed up towards the bodice on the top and down towards the shorts on the bottom. And I just sew straight down the middle here. And again, it helps keep the elastic from flipping if you do this in all 4 spots, and this keeps the drawstring in here. So I just sew straight down there so that they can't rip that little drawstring. And even myself, I do it on myself, not just on my kids. I do it on myself so that it doesn't come out when my kids yank on mine or in the washer and dryer. In the past, if I forget to do that, I have some that will come out every time I wash them. And I have to throw them back through. You think I'd eventually come up here and sew it on, but instead I just grumble every time. Alright, so we have a complete romper. I cannot wait for my daughter to see this one. Oh, you know what? We forgot these ends. So there's 2 possible ways to finish these ends. You can push in the raw edges and sew a straight stitch, What I almost always do is just tie it in a knot. I think it looks really cute, and it should keep your stitch from coming undone. And there you go. You can tie this in a bow if you want, or a knot, or leave it hanging. It's nice and secure now that we stitched it down. There we go. I hope you guys had fun sewing along with me, and I cannot wait to see your finished rompers and dresses.